Hi and welcome to the We Need Votes podcast, and after a massive break of what seems like years, you're back already, David. Back after one missing episode.
Oh yeah, I wasn't in the last one, was I?
No, it was me and Jose.
Because we've recorded like quite soon, back to back. I forget that you went out there and cheated on me.
Hey,
Was he better? Was he better than me now?
I mean, he had notes. But yes, how much wedding planning have you got done in the time you've been off?
Actually, you know what? We did all right. We've sorted suits out now, so I have a suit, and the rings sorted. I just need to actually pick them up. But yeah, no, we did get some stuff done, and have we got your food options through?
Yes, I emailed Natasha a week or so ago.
She will have updated her notes. Then that's good.
Yes.
Good job.
I believe there is a spreadsheet that I've been added to.
Yes, good job.
Yeah, so speaking of weddings and romance, as it's February, the month of corporate mandated love, unless you are happily single, it's time for our favourite top 10 most romantic films of all time. And yes, I made sure to quantify romantic rather than romantic comedy, because I have a feeling, David, you and me are going to vary quite a bit on what constitutes a romantic film. But first, before we get to that, shout-outs. Because I put a question out on Twitter earlier today, asking for our fans and listeners to let us know what their favourite romantic films of all time. I'm pretty sure our friend Zach listens to every episode, and he's put, for some reason, Serendipity always made me smile. And while the book is the best, the movie version of High Fidelity grows a little more on me every time I watch it. He's definitely a Cusack fan, and hey, John Cusack is one of those actors who he was the best in the 80s and 90s, man, definitely. Podcast in the Woods, I guarantee you, David, this will not be on either of our lists, said one of their favourite romantic movies was Return of the Living Dead Part 3. I've always loved this one. Great date movie for weirdos like me. It's cute, a little gory, and a good time.
I love it.
And if that's not a poster quote, I don't know what is.
I love it.
Rachel Miller said Only You with Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. It is written in the stars, also Made in Heaven 1987 film. A couple meets in heaven. They have 30 years to find each other when they're reborn back on Earth. But will they find each other though? I have not seen that. I've seen Only You with Tomei. I have not seen Made in Heaven. So that'll be an 80s one to bang on the list as well. Also, Carlo at the movie Loot said, of course, When Harry Met Sally. Next up, we've got, Next to the Aisle. And from Jamie over at Next to the Aisle, he's given us 4 films. 4.5/5. When Harry Met Sally, of course, genre classic. Once, Sing Street, The Shop Around the Corner, and You've Got Mail, which, if I remember rightly, is the remake of The Shop Around the Corner. So essentially, they are the same film. Also, Sweet Films and Alcohol said to us, 500 Days of Summer is a must for us.
That was on my long list, 500 Days of Summer. I nearly put that in there, but it didn't quite. It was close.
So, how do you define a romantic movie, David?
So for me, a romantic movie isn't just a movie that has a romance element in it. For example, pretty much every movie, like your Star Wars films, you've got the relationship that goes on between Han and Leia or whatever. But there's not
Darth and his helmet.
But it's not
Han and Chewbacca.
That's not a romantic movie. That's not a romantic.
C-3PO and R2.
So exactly. Okay, you're just saying characters now, but that for me isn't a romantic movie. That's just a film that has romance in it. So a romantic movie for me is something that romance is the core driving force throughout the entire movie in some way or another, and it's a constant. It falls back to it constantly throughout.
Okay, yeah, I'd agree with that. It's the definitive point of the film.
Yes.
I may have one or two that I maybe have one that I think we can argue that with.
So I've got one that is not, but I have a backup for it anyway, and it's quite low down on my list. But
is it Freddy Got Fingered?
It's not Freddy Got Fingered. That was close. That was close to me pooping on it. Goddamn Freddy Got Fingered. Get out of here with that shit.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
No, I fucking wouldn't.
Sausages.
No.
Sausages.
No, Neil.
I'm the backwards man. The backwards man. I can go back as fast as you can. I'm the backwards man. I'm the backwards man. I can walk back as fast as you can.
Okay, you're on your own.
Okay. So, long list. Films that didn't make your top 10. What do we got?
Okay, cool. I have Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that film. 500 Days of Summer, as I already mentioned. This one is not the beating heart of the film, but it is, in a way, Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, not really.
Well, it is, because he chooses at the end to pursue that over his intelligence and his what he can do for the world. He decides to just be him. So it is in a way. And Cold Mountain.
Oh, yeah. I've Renee Zellweger and I can't remember who else. Jude Law?
Jude Law, yeah.
I have not seen that in years.
Nicole Kidman as well. Yeah, good
That's
film.
the one.
That's my long list. So what my films, by the way, as well, I've not gone for films that... I've not gone for, like, Casablanca. I've not gone for Breathless. I've not gone for It's a Beautiful Life. I've gone for films that I would actually snuggle up on the sofa and watch with Natasha on a romantic night. If we were having a date night watching a movie, a film that we would actually watch, and not Casablanca. You know, Casablanca's a film I've watched maybe 3 or 4 times, but it's not a film I'm going to watch, you know, on a nice...
Like all our lists, like all our top 10 lists we do, they're films that are more personal to us.
Yeah, I'm not going to...
and that's the reason.
The films that I would actually watch, and not films that... I'm not going to be typical and be, you know... like Casablanca's my number 1. It's not even on my long list. It's a good, like, obviously it's a great film, but I'm not going to snuggle up with it on a night.
I don't think I have a film pre the 1980 maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, all my films are like from, you know, as I've grown up onwards, I think. So on my long list, I've got a Richard Curtis film, David.
Richard Curtis. Okay. Is it For Weddings and a Funeral?
No.
Is it Notting Hill?
No.
Is it Love Actually?
No.
Did he do Love Actually? I think he did. Is it... I'm out of Richard Curtis.
About Time.
Oh, okay.
About Time. That is my Rachel McAdams one on the list.
I don't know. I don't mind. You know what? Another one. Rachel... This is one that I did think of, but I couldn't find a decent point for it. Was Time Traveler's Wife. I quite like Time Traveler's Wife, but it didn't quite make my long list.
Yeah, I think that could have... Yeah, that would have been... And I'll tell you, a modern romantic comedy that I was only a couple of years old that really surprised me because I was like, this isn't going to be that good. And Long Shot, the Seth Rogen, Charlize Theron one.
Oh, yeah, I know the one. Yeah, where she's a politician, isn't she, or something? And
she's
yeah.
president.
President, is it? Okay, there you go.
She's the president, I think, yeah. And he's like a scriptwriter for her. And I was like... And they like knew each other years ago before. And I was like... And it's just, they're just so effortlessly like charming. And you're like, yeah, I want these two to get together. Despite all the obstacles of her being president and him being a stoner who doesn't like the government in a way. I mean, that's just Seth Rogen in real life, right?
It is.
What else have I got?
So why is your number 1?
And I'm gonna cut that. I'm definitely gonna cut that. One more that almost made it to my list but didn't. Shaun of the Dead. And again, it's one of the ones that I kind of disqualified it because really the relationship, yes, he does do everything to go and rescue his girlfriend who he'd failed over and over again. But really, the real love story is between Shaun and Ed, really.
Yeah, it's more of a bromance than a romance.
It's more of a bromance.
Yeah. I've gone very quite typical with my romance. I've gone not gone like bromance. I've not gone a relationship between father and son. I've not gone a relationship between mother and daughter.
I wonder whether ours are actually going to be a lot closer than we think. Although you did post a load of gifts the other day when we were discussing this beforehand. And if it was all the ones from the gifts, then was that just to throw me off the scent?
No, they were pretty. They were quite a lot of them were in amongst it.
So you have gone pretty generic then, as I'm saying.
Yeah, pretty generic. Well, like I said, the ones that I would actually watch.
Which is fair enough, because it's down to personal choice at the end of the day. Well, first up, David, is my number 11. And that is Adventureland.
Okay. You know what? I didn't mind Adventure. So that's with Jesse Eisenberg, isn't it?
Eisenberg. When people liked him.
Chris Stewart.
Kristen Stewart. Yeah.
That's one of those films that was just an enjoyable watch for no reason.
Well, it's quite a gentle little, coming of age, basic, romance. And they're the ones they're kind of my favourite types of film, man. And
it wasn't very popular either, was it? Oh yeah, Ryan Reynolds is he's
the loser older guy.
Yeah.
But then you've also got Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig, Martin Starr. And I think this is my favourite Kristen Stewart teen romance film. None of that sparkly vampire bollocks for me.
No, fair enough. I put that up. That was a good film. That was a good film.
Yeah, very good film.
I'll give it to you.
God, we're agreeing so far. Must be all the love in the air. So, David, what do you have at number 10?
At number 10, I have Groundhog Day.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, there you go. Again, it's one of those where is it? But it is. I classify that as a romantic comedy.
Well, because he's doing everything he does.
Comedy. Yeah, everything he's doing is to try and basically
Win.
shag the
Andy McDowell.
Yep, which he spectacularly fails over how many attempts?
I mean, we lose track. I mean, so many films have ripped Groundhog Day off, haven't they? In after, in the way of repeating
it's your ultimate classic time loop movie.
Trope. We've had so many in the last couple of years of time
and none of
loop
them have done it
movies
better.
and shows. No, it's a classic for a reason, man.
It's probably actually, is it my favorite?
Bill Murray?
Is it? Yeah, is it my favorite Bill Murray film?
I always have to go with Ghostbusters, man.
It'd tell you what,
Always.
it'd be really close. It probably would be my favorite Bill Murray film.
Well, for me, David, my number 10 also has the word 10 in the title.
10 days.
Things I Hate About You.
Oh, I like that film.
Yeah,
That was in my that was in one of the gifts I sent you.
I know.
I thought you were like taking the piss out of those. No, I love that movie. That was on my long list as well. That didn't make my
It
full
didn't make the
list.
top 10.
Nah.
So let's get into it. So 10 Things I Hate About You, written by Karen McCullough and Kristen Smith, and it's obviously based on Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare. Directed by, to be fair, he's not done much since, a director called Gil Junger. I think I'm pronouncing that right. We can't do names. This has been established over many, many episodes. But it stars Julia Stiles, Heath Ledger, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and the oft-forgotten Larissa Oleynik. Now, this was released in March 1999, and it was quite a decent-sized hit at the time. It made 60 million from a budget of 13 million, and arguably made stars of 3 of its 4 main cast at least. And it's funny, do you know what? I'd forgotten so much about this film when I began writing this up. And so I had a quick look at the frankly terrible trailer for it on YouTube, and that was not a good idea. I mean, the trailer is very bad. Like, it's so dated. I know it's like 24 years old now, but good God.
When did it come out again? Sorry, 1999.
1999,
Wow.
Yeah. Same year as The Matrix. And it does remind you, though, the trailer, because I completely forgotten. Like, in hindsight, I just remember, this is the film, it's Heath Ledger, Julia Stiles. I'd completely forgotten that there was supposed to be 2 love stories going on in the film, which you've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt and her sister that he's after.
Yes.
I'd actually forgotten Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in this film. And the plot is basically sophomore student Cameron, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, immediately falling in love with popular girl Bianca, played by Larissa Oleynik. And however, the caveat is her father will not let her date anyone until her grouchy older sister, Kat, played by Julia Stiles, begins to date as well. And as Bianca rather unfairly states in the trailer, but she's a mutant. I mean, this is Julia Stiles in her early 20s. She's clearly not a mutant.
Well, she didn't put makeup on. That was kind of all it took back in the day, I suppose.
She played hockey. She listened to rock music.
She
Lots
was
of
a
riot
typical
girl
tomboy,
music.
if you were to go down that route.
But Cameron essentially he finds one of his douchebag mates finds mysterious new bad boy Patrick Verona. I mean, they were really reaching on the Shakespeare links there, weren't they? And they offer him $500 to go out with Kat, which, of course, if you've seen any movie of this type, you know exactly how this is going to go. I think from all the 90s style teen movies, this one still stands out as one of the best due to the electric charisma and chemistry from Stiles and Ledger. I mean, the first scenes that I remember from this when I was thinking back on it was the scene where she gets really hammered drunk at a party, makes a complete numpty of herself, dances on the table,
collapses.
and then vomits all over him.
Yeah.
No, she pukes all over him.
She collapses
And of
on
course-
the table.
Yeah,
And then
but then
vomits.
when he's taken her out, he's like, "You have such green," and then vomits all over him.
Blah.
Yeah, love a good vomit scene.
The dancing, the singing on the bleachers.
And that's the next scene, of course, the Can't Take My Eyes Off of You scene with the marching band, which actually, this scene was spoofed brilliantly a few years later in the brilliant Not Another Teen Movie. Do you remember that?
Yeah. No, it's good. That's the only spoof film that I actually enjoy. It's not enough teen movie.
Well, it also an early Chris Evans role playing the main guy in it.
Yeah.
And the girl in it's called Janie. So instead of Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, he's singing Janie's Got a Gun. And so there's just people chasing her. He's like, she's got a gun, get her. I just remember it was hilarious. I also like that in this film, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, he kind of develops as the film goes on. Because the main girl, she's kind of a bit of a vapid bitch, to be fair. Like, she takes his friendship for granted. And at the end, he finally snaps. Patrick Verona's kind of been giving him advice as the film goes on. He's kind of a bit wet behind the ears at the start. And at the end, he's like, look, you got to stand up for yourself, man. You can't she's never going to go out of you if you don't grow a pair, essentially. And he basically rips her a new... No, that's a bad choice of words. He verbally berates her selfishness and finally stands up for himself, which is his character's arc. And then, of course, she's like, oh, he stands up for himself, and they immediately kiss and, get it on. Shout out to the always great Alison Janney from The West Wing, CJ from The West Wing, who plays schoolteacher Miss Perky, who spends the whole film writing an erotic novel during school hours. And, of course, David, it wouldn't be me without mentioning there's lots of great 90s bands on the soundtrack. How many people... I mean,
who
you've
was
got to
the
remember...
band at the very end that she...
Letters to Cleo.
Is that who... Okay. Is it? That's not what they're called in the film, is it?
Can't remember. I think there was they like a band within the filmic world of the film.
I think. Well, that was a terrible sentence. Well, there's the band that she is desperate to go, and they're singing at the roof of the school at the very end.
Yeah, that's Letters to Cleo.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's quite a good trait. Yeah, because as a trait, that's her favourite band who she wanted to see. Right? I remember. Yeah, I remember that now. Well, that's the film's anthem, but also it's a cover. It's a cover of the old Cheap Trick song. It's also got lots more like 90s bands like the Cardigans, who of course Loveful was in Romeo and Juliet, and you got Semisonic on there as well. So there were so many interlinks between a lot of these films at the time. And yeah, so many of these 90s and late 90s romantic teen films really don't hold up today. I mean, has anyone watched She's All That recently? Probably not. But styles and they're just performances, man. And then their chemistry. I think those performances make sure this stands out from the rest of the pack, I think. So yeah, 10 things I hear about you at number 10.
I like it, Neil. I like it very much. You've had a lot of time on that one as it is, and we're meant to be doing these things quickly. You've already broken the one rule that we had.
I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule. I actually was going to do 10 things I hate about you, but then I thought that's a bit mean for a Valentine's podcast.
Well, my number 9 was also going to have Heath Ledger in it, but then I think I've decided that it doesn't really count as a romantic movie, and it's more just a movie that's got romance in it, and that was going to be A Knight's Tale.
Oh, I was going to say Knight's Tale. Yeah, no, I couldn't even tell you who the female lead is in that film.
Well, neither can I off the top of my head. Or can I?
I think it's Shannon Sossamon. Was the actress?
It was Shannon Sossamon.
So Sossamon, yeah. Can't remember her character name, but yeah, I just remember Jocelyn. There you go.
Yeah, and he was William Thatcher, Jocelyn, Mark Addy. I can't remember his character name.
Was he Fat King?
No, Mark Addy is his drunken.
I thought the drunken guy. That's Paul Bettany. But this isn't in your list anyway, is it, David? Anyway, so what is your number 9?
I decided to not have that as number 9, and instead I went for Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah. Is that a romance? I've only watched it once,
the whole
to be
film,
honest.
because it's constantly beating back to his relationship. He does everything in it is constantly rolling back to his relationship with Latika.
Okay.
Yes.
I've watched it once. I enjoyed it when I watched it, but it was not a film that really stuck long in the memory.
It's like a drama romance. It's like just dramatically romantic. The Danny Boyle film, starring Dev Patel, Frida Pinto, about a young man from the slums, who basically
slums it.
It's quite similar to other films where you just see going through phases and phases, different phases of his life as he's being accused of cheating on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And throughout the film, he recollects moments from his life that are the answers to the questions and how he knows the answers to the questions. And we see these through various flashbacks that tell the story of his life up to that point. And like I mentioned, Latika, which is the romantic element, is his sort of childhood sweetheart, childhood friend, and there's the constantly bringing up where she is, where she's doing, and he's basically trying to save her from her predicament that she finds herself in at the end.
I cannot remember much about this film, if I'm honest.
It's one of those films that is just, you throw it on and you can just enjoy it. There's no kind of at any point as well. You don't have to really watch it from the beginning. You can just enjoy the film for the film. You know, it's
kids
sort of
today watching your films.
If it's on, but if you're just like bored flicking through the channels and you go to like the movie channel and Slumdog Millionaire's on, it started 20 minutes ago.
David, there is so much stuff out there. How can you never have more stuff to watch?
Well, I'm saying if you're old, and that's what you do.
I am old.
And there you go.
Not that old. Okay, well, here's a film, David. For my number 9 is a film that came out before you were born, for definite. And it's an 80s classic teen romance.
Porky's.
No, that's a frat house comedy, not a romance. Also, I'm pretty sure Porky's is definitely problematic.
As well.
That's also the 70s as well, yeah. No, this is a John Cusack film. And many of us know the defining image of this classic 80s teen romance, even if you've never seen the film, because it has been copied ad nausea over the years. And this is the film, David, where John Cusack's lovable loser, Lloyd Dobler, turns up outside his ex-girlfriend's house, Diane, with the boombox, holding it in the air, playing Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes. David, what is that film? And have you ever seen it or heard of it?
I don't think I've watched it.
Okay, but have you heard of it? But you know the iconic.
Well, you haven't told me what it is yet. Is it Hot Pursuit? I'm literally just looking at John Cusack films and thinking, is it that one?
From the 80s, and there is a lot. And there is a lot from the 80s, man. No, it is Cameron Crowe's Say Anything. And this was the debut directing gig of Cameron Crowe, who would go on to mega success with Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous, and then kind of not as good success afterwards, because he did Elizabethtown, which Zach Braff basically did the same year with Garden State, and it was a million times better. And then his most recent films were I Bought a Zoo and Aloha. And indeed, Aloha back in 2015 was Cameron's last film, and he's not really done anything since, and it's a shame, because Say Anything is, for me, one of the quintessential 80s high school romantic
movies. He must have been very
movies.
young if he's just done, like, We Bought a Zoo, which was like, what? Actually, that was 10 years ago. But he must have been quite young when he did that film.
Well, I mean, have you ever seen Almost Famous?
Yes, I have. With the
So that's based on the kid in it, right? That's based on Cameron Crowe's own life story. When he was young, when he was a kid, he basically was that kid. He wrote for Rolling Stone and travelled around the world writing about rock and roll bands. And his first film he wrote was another famous 80s teen comedy, which was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Cameron Crowe wrote it, and it was directed by Amy Heckerling, who would go on to do Clueless. But this was, but getting back, Say Anything was his first film as a director. And I'd completely forgotten the late, great John Mahoney from Frasier was in this, playing Diane's dad. Diane, of course, played by, again, an actress who's not really done much in recent years, Ione Skye. And he's a bit of a criminal, which comes out in the film. And, of course, he opposes their relationship, doesn't think Cusack's character's good enough for him. And, again, good enough for her. And, again, the sheer talent in this film at the time. So Cusack's sister in the film is played in an uncredited role by Joan Cusack, his actual sister. But you had appearances from young Jeremy Piven, Eric Stoltz, Pamela Adlon. You had Baby Nurif, who would also go on to join John Mahoney in Frasier. The great Philip Baker Hall, who would make his name a lot of years later in quite a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's early films. And there's even an uncredited appearance by Homer Simpson himself, Dan Castellaneta. I've really forgotten about the intricacies and more real-life feel this film had compared to its counterparts at the time. You know, a lot of the 80s films were, a lot of, razzle-dazzle, and that's a terrible phrase. But although a romantic comedy, this was a film that dealt with embezzlement issues and family troubles and money issues. And it delved a lot more into the main characters' families' home lives and how it affected the characters than you'd normally expect to see in a typical teen film at the time. You know, a lot of those films at the time, it would just be typical, parents rebel against their parents. And this one, they actually got on quite well with the parents, and it was the parents' issues. So Wikipedia also informs me that Ione Skye's character was almost played by Jennifer Connelly, and Robert Downey Jr. turned down the main role of Lloyd, and it was also offered to Christian Slater and Kirk Cameron before Cusack landed the role. It was barely a success though at the time, only making $20 million from a budget of $16 million. But in the years since, it's gone on to become an iconic 80s teen film. And of course, you're going to notice a pattern here, David, with me mentioning music in the films. Cameron Crowe, whose music journalism background you will know, as we mentioned with Almost Famous, he assembled a killer soundtrack for this film. And he actually married a lady called Nancy Wilson, who was part of an 80s rock band called Heart at the time as well. So she contributes music. You had Living Colour. Now, David, the only song you might recognise from Living Colour is they did CM Punk's theme music, Cult of Personality. There's also Cheap Trick on it, just like 10 Things I Hate About You. The Replacements, Joe Satriani, Fishbone, early Red Hot Chili Peppers, and of course, the Peter Gabriel song. Boomboxes all round. Also, David, I have to say, if we didn't have this boombox sequence, would we have the card sequence with Andrew Lincoln in Love Actually. Maybe, maybe not. David, what is your number 8 film?
My number 8 film, Neil, is a guaranteed tearjerker for me. Every time I watch it, it leaves me in floods of tears. From 2004, starring Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams.
The Notebook.
The Notebook, Neil, yes. Now, The Notebook would probably be higher up in my list if it wasn't for the fact that once you've sort of on repeat watching and on various, further on from 2004, you realise that they're in quite a toxic relationship. There's nothing really about their relationship, which is quite... Well, there is endearing points of it, but it is also quite very toxic. It's not really something that you'd want to be celebrating. But, having said that, the film is still just utterly beautiful. So it tells the story of a young, poor Ryan Gosling, called Noah, who falls in love with...
Does he have an arc?
He does not have an arc, no. I think this film popularised the name Noah again, because every fucking kid's called Noah nowadays. It probably wasn't this film. But he falls in love with a richer, also young woman, Rachel McAdams, called Ali.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this beautiful romantic teen romance going on with each other. And then they're both pulled apart and separated through various different means. She's moved to a different place, has to go to school, learn her things. He gets pulled away and has to go to war. So basically they just get pulled apart. They get separated. And then they find each other again later on in life whilst she's engaged to another man. He's broken from the war and reconcile their relationship, fall in love again. And the ending, so the whole film, I kind of don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but
that's fair enough.
The whole film is it's told through the perspective of this two elderly couple, a man and a woman who don't know each other, right. And called Duke, who's telling the story to another lady in a care home. They're just telling the story, this love story that he's telling throughout the film, and it turns out to be their love story. And Ali suffers with dementia.
Always get that in these films, don't you?
The end. So the end of the film is her remembering and dying in his arms. Just them both dying together once they remember their life and love together. And it is honestly, I think it's the one film I can think of that will make you cry on a happy ending.
I mean, does it sound like a happy ending? I mean, I suppose
because she remembers. That's a happy ending. She remembers.
Yeah.
And they die together, knowing that their romance, that they die romantically, remembering each other.
Okay.
She remembers, and that's how they want to die together, and they both do. It is a happy ending, and I don't think there's a happy ending in any other film that would make you cry. It's a fucking hard feat. For something to be so happy it makes you cry.
A happy ending that just destroys you.
That makes you that ball your eyes.
Might be a question worth putting out
and
there
that
on our
does.
Twitter,
You might
David.
want to put a spoiler alert before, just in case people want to actually watch the film and not have that.
I have a feeling if you're listening to a podcast where they're talking about romantic films and The Notebook, I'm pretty sure. Do you know what?
It's probably going to come up.
It's probably going to come up,
but
I mean that was a nailed on one for your list, man. I just knew it.
Yeah, but it is heart wrenching and beautiful at the same time, and that happy ending, I genuinely think it's the only happy ending where it will make you. It might not be. There might
our
be
listeners
others.
will come up with others. I'm sure there's others. My number 8 is a film that is set over 500 days, David. 500 Days of Summer.
Yes.
Yep, this is the second film in my list to feature Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I think he's definitely kind of made a name for himself.
Deschanel?
It is the first Zooey Deschanel, but he's definitely made a name for himself in romantic comedies over the years, and well, ironically, 10 years after 10 Things I Hate About You, he starred in another genre classic, which is, of course, this film. Now, again, I watched the dodgy trailer.
Directed by Mark Webb, wasn't it?
Mark
went on
Webb,
to do
Spider-Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the trailer, again, it doesn't hold up as well, to be fair. I don't know what it was about these like early 2000s trailers, but the trailer even informs us this is not a love story. And quickly we learn that Zooey Deschanel's character, Summer, has dumped Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Tom.
This is not a love story.
And what the film does, it goes back. It's pretty much, that was about as good as the trailer, to be fair, David. But that's not a positive thing.
It's not a love story. It's a story about love. Bam.
But the film then goes back to the first day they met, and the clicker goes back to 0. And then as we progress through the film, we kind of key into all the major key points of their relationship over the 500 days when, of course, we know they're going to break up. And this is a story of how they meet, how they fall in love, and how they eventually break up. And, of course, at the start, he falls in love with her. She doesn't, but she's enjoying the casual fling. So right through to their breakup, and it's just right through to their breakup, and Tom's subsequent attempts to win her back. Now, I think whereas in 10 Things I Hate About You, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was completely overshadowed by Ledger, he really doesn't have any competition in the male lead stakes in this film. There's not really any other character. It's such a twosome in this film with, it's him and Zooey Deschanel. And
the music in this film is on point as well.
Oh,
like the Smiths. I remember the Smiths features heavily in it.
And this is all indeed as well peak Zooey Deschanel as well for me, because so many have copied her kind of manic pixie dream girl, which is a phrase I hate, but it's came from her and this type of performance. She's that in Gordon-Levitt's eyes, she is that perfect girl for him, and she's just the most Zooey Deschanel she's ever been in anything in this film. As a brief sidebar, I remember that Gordon-Levitt also appeared in a Christmas film called The Night Before, which, although was more about his friendships declining over the years, it still had a major plot point where he was pining over another ex-girlfriend in this film, played by Lizzie Kaplan, who honestly could be Zooey Deschanel's twin. They look so much alike. And I was just like, he has definitely got a type in these films. And I wonder, it just made me wonder why he keeps doing the same role. But I digress. So highlights from the film are Tom's drunken slaughter of one of my favourite Pixies songs of all time, Here Comes Your Man, in just a horrifically funny karaoke scene. And of course, the show-stopping, amazing song and dance sequence set to You Make My Dreams Come True by Hall & Oates, right after him and Summer have got together for the first time. And I watched that again yesterday, man, and it's just hilarious. Just he's walking down the street, skipping, dancing, he's shaking hands with people, he's high-fiving them,
That's
he
the
gets lifted
animation
up on his
scene,
shoulders.
isn't it?
Yeah, and then like little blue birds come on and fly around him, and he gets to hit a fake home run, and they have the sound of the crowd cheer. And it's that is his, for me, that's as good as Ledger's marching band moment as well. It's just, I just liked it. But also, I like that essentially Summer is right throughout the film, and it's only once they've broken up and he's finally moves on that he realizes, oh yeah, it wasn't really working out. And although he's understandably shocked when they meet up much later and he finds out she's now married, of course, how much Tom has grown, we're not really sure, because at the end of the film, and I think this is all going to be spoilers, David, to be fair.
I know what happens. I remember.
Yeah. He meets Minka Kelly's new character, who is called Autumn. So, is the film kind of implying that he's just going to go back into the same craziness and head over heels that he did with Summer early in the film? Or, as she suggests when they meet up later on, because when
he breaks the fourth wall at the end, doesn't he, as well? He looks at the camera.
Well, it's when he meets her later on and she's like, oh yeah, I'm married. And he's like, but you never wanted to get married. You never wanted anything serious. She's like, yeah, well, not with you. And it's kind of harsh, but she's right. And she's like, but, when you meet the right person, then obviously you'll feel the same way. And he's kind of like, oh, okay. And earlier in the film, Tom would have ran sobbing into his, drunken Pixies karaoke. But here he's kind of a bit more okay. And of course, it helps that like Minka Kelly's character walks in straight after that pretty much. And but then, of course, and the counter, and I think the film does suggest that she is the one, because the counter flips right back round to day one again. This film was quite a success, Dave. Only a mild success. I mean, it only cost $10 million to make, which is nothing these days, and was probably not really much back in those days. But it did make $33 million. So yeah, 500 Days of Summer is my number 8, David.
It's that. No, I really enjoy that film as well. I actually wanted to try and get me and Natasha to watch that together a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, she's not seen it?
No, she hasn't seen it. No. So I showed her the trailer, and like you said, the trailer was pretty shit.
Yeah, the trailer.
To try and watch it together, and she didn't I remember the IKEA scene in that being just so enjoyable. And then he's just standing there like smashing plates as he in his depression state, like crashes to like the juxtaposition between the two, like the happy and depressed Tom. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
done
a
really
classic,
well.
man. So, David, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is. I was gonna say it's another film starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but it's not.
No. Okay.
No, it's not. No. It's, but it is another film that's starring Heath Ledger, who seems to be coming up a lot as well. It is Brokeback Mountain.
Ah.
Again,
Okay. With Jake Gyllenhaal.
with Jake Gyllenhaal,
Jakey
Michelle
G.
Williams. It's
Anne
really
Hathaway.
Heath Ledger. And Anne Hathaway. Yeah, it's really Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger that drive the entire film, and the relationship that blossoms between the two ranchers. I can't even actually remember what they were doing. What were they doing? They were just
They were ranching.
working together in the mountains.
Yeah. Well,
And
I mean, they weren't getting a lot of work done, were they?
No, they blossom. Well, no, they did. They did work in the mornings. But anyway, it blossoms into a sexual relationship between the two, which is very much forbidden, very much like, forbidden love. Which that is one thing for me that I'm a sucker for, forbidden love. I love a good forbidden love story.
I mean, especially in the time in the American West in like the 60s, because it's set between 63 and 83, isn't it? So, yeah, I think there's obviously quite a lot of places like that.
And they're both married at the time as well. So it's very much a closeted homosexual relationship that they're having between them, and it is. And the moment, again, another heartbreaking, tear-jerking moment for me is when, after Jake Gyllenhaal's, spoilers, Jake Gyllenhaal's character gets beaten to death, Heath Ledger goes to his home and he's just like feeling his clothes, just touching them and holding them and like smelling them, and it breaks you every time you watch it.
Well, of course, it's directed by the great Ang Lee, and although it's not one of my, it's a brilliant, powerful film, and I suppose you have to.
It's
say
probably the most powerful movie that I have on my list.
Well, it's a proper Oscar-winning film, except it didn't win. It lost to bloody Crash in 2004, and I think, again, like it says on the Wikipedia, they say it better than I was trying to figure the best way to say it. It's a turning point for gay cinema into the mainstream, because you had two really big actors at the top of their game, playing gay, but telling a beautiful love story in the way they did it as well. And again, the more you get films like this in front of more eyes and people who would never consider seeing that in a million years, it helps normalise it. It helps make the people who have problem with it go, oh, well, okay, it's not, and that's what you need. You need more of this stuff out there. I mean, my favourite thing I've seen in years that kind of deals with a gay relationship was probably Feel Good that I talked about last year with Mae Martin.
The best thing I've seen in years that deals with a gay relationship is the Last of Us episode. That episode was just fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, could have probably forgot about that. That was literally like a couple of weeks ago as we record this. But that's TV, and we're going to do a bit on Last of Us when it's all finished, which could be any time now, depending on when this goes out. So also, I should mention, David, its budget was only 14 million, and it ended up a smash 178 million. So the producers got paid on that.
It did win 3 Oscars as well. I know it didn't win Best Picture like you mentioned, but it did win. Ang Lee did win for Best Director. It won for Best Adapted Screenplay, and it won for Achievement in Music.
I didn't realise as well, looking at the cast list, that Anna Faris was in it. David Harbour was in it, pre-Stranger Things. I can't even remember him in it. And Kate Mara was in it as well, sister of Rooney Mara, like back in it. So, again, quite a lot of people in the day on that, man. Yeah. All right, David, anything else to add on your mountain?
No,
Cool.
Nothing to add on Brokeback. Just that it is devastating and beautiful.
You've got a lot of devastation on your list, David.
I think,
romantic ones.
in forbidden relationship stories, a lot of it doesn't end well, and in this one, it ends in the worst possible way.
So wouldn't it be nice to have a film where it's like that and it ends in a good way?
It would be.
Be a nice change.
It would be.
Okay, so David, for my number 7 film, can you tell me where is Fluffy?
Oh, I feel like I know this.
It is a central question of my next film, which is from 2008. It's very underrated and it's directed by Peter Sollett, and it stars Michael Cera and Kat Dennings.
Michael Cera?
Michael Cera, yes.
Okay.
Because that film is
Tell me.
Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist.
I've not seen. Okay, I don't know.
Oh, you'll like it, David. I think you'll like it. Right, add it to your date night list.
I'm going to Google it real quick. Nick and Nora's
Infinite
Playlist. That's
Playlist.
not how you
So,
Nick.
once again, Michael Cera plays a musician in a band who can't get over his ex. So, a bit like Scott Pilgrim. And his ex in this is played by the sadly hasn't done much for ages, Alexis Dazenia. And Dennings plays Nora, who basically in this film, David, he can't get over his ex-girlfriend, and he keeps making like mixed CDs for her. And Nora, who goes to the same school as his ex-girlfriend, finds the CDs, and he's like, "Oh, this guy's got really good taste." And he also plays in a queercore band called the Jerkoffs, who have their own hilarious subplot as the film goes on. But essentially, everyone ends up at the same gig, and then it's announced on stage there's a quest to find a legendary indie band called Where's Fluffy, who are going to be doing a secret gig somewhere in the city that night. And the idea, it's one of these films that I love, where it's based around the love of music and the ultimate reward of the gig at the end. It's got really big sort of Linklater Dazed and Confused feels to it, whereas most of the film takes place in the one night. I love the fact he's the only straight member of the queercore band called the Jerkoffs. And like I say, they have a great subplot where Nora's out with one of her friends who is spectacularly drunk, and she's called Caroline, and they offer to take her home so that Nick and Nora can hang out and, you know, find a gig, because the band also couldn't stand his ex, and they like, hey, Nora's cool, they should get together, so they offer to take her friend home. Her friend obviously gets drunk, is so drunk she escapes because she thinks she's being kidnapped, and she goes off on her own weird adventure, and it's this weird little subplot. And you know, usually in these films you have to have these subplots to break up the main romance, but they're really funny in this. Ari Grainer, who plays her, she's really good, man. And Kat Dennings is also always a welcome on-screen presence, and I think this was about the same time she was doing Two Broke Girls sitcom. This is when everyone liked Michael Cera, you know. At this point, he had down...
With Kat Dennings, I feel like she's one of those actresses that should be more famous than she
should be in more stuff,
is.
Yeah. I will say, though, the film has similarities with another Cera film where he also plays a musician. He also has to confront his would-be girlfriend's current kind of boyfriend. Just like, so at the, you know, in this, he finds out that Nora's kind of got an on and off again boyfriend, played by here a guy called Jay Baruchel, who's a bit of a douchebag. And I was like, this has got a lot in common with Scott Pilgrim, right? He's got another, you know, who's a character, Jason Schwartzman's character, Gideon, who's a villain at the end of that, who he kind of has to have it out with to like win Ramona over. So I was like, Cera, this is almost like a dry run for that film, really.
Isn't that a bit toxic as well, though? You have to physically fight somebody for a woman to, you know.
Well, they don't fight; they just kind of argue in this, and he's, you know, it's a much sort of gentler film, but it's just, and then again, I will tell you that this film cost a paltry 10 million, and it made exactly the same as 500 Days of Summer, 33 million. So hey, you tripled your money, and you made a good film. So yeah, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, David, definitely worth a watch.
Okay.
What have you got for your number 6?
At number 6, Neil, I have a film starring Johnny Depp.
Ooh. Edward Scissorhands.
It is Edward Scissorhands, yes.
Yeah.
Good job, man. Good. Were you just like, okay, he's in one romantic movie?
Yeah. What film is he not? He's weird in every film. What film is he less weird in, and he's a lead and it's a romance?
Yes, there you go. Well, the Tim Burton film starring Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder, about a man with scissors for hands, living, and that's kind of it. That's the movie.
There's a little bit more to it. Isn't Winona Ryder in it?
I did say Winona Ryder's in it, and you know it's, you know, Burton does wonderfully of presenting the typical suburban American lifestyle, and switching that and showing his gothic castle brain. That is Tim Burton.
Whenever you say Gothic Castle, it always makes me think of the joke in Arrested Development where there's a S&M club called the Gothic Arsehole.
Okay, okay, well, I don't know this. Naturally, Johnny Depp Edward and Winona Ryder's character Kim spend a lot of time together, because he becomes basically adopted by the family, and two people of the same age spending a lot of time together, it's only really going to have one thing that happens. They blossom into a wonderful romance. And again, it's kind of like that forbidden romance theme going on with this film, where she's the beautiful princess character. I had a massive crush on Winona Ryder when I watched this film for the first time. I say when it came out before I was born.
Yeah,
but when
in the womb.
Yeah. But when I watched this film when I was younger, I had a massive crush on Winona Ryder afterwards. It made me sad that, I watched it and she hadn't really... her career sort of went a bit strange after this.
She had a few issues.
Or maybe not after this, but after she had a slump in her career, definitely. Because she was cast in Black Swan specifically because her character was the same as her character, like her acting career in real life, where it had just a massive slump.
Well, I think she's been on the comeback, isn't she, since Stranger
Things?
Yeah,
100%. No, I'm a Ryder fan, but but anyway, this film, it's a good one. Anything to add on? Tim Burton.
I've got a little bit here. Did you know that Drew Barrymore originally auditioned for the role
of Winona Ryder?
Yeah,
I can see it. I didn't know it, but I can definitely see her playing the role.
Tim Burton was like, nah, because obviously he worked with her on Beetlejuice before, so he's like, no, I want Winona.
Okay. The Danny Elfman sound. Something has to be said about the Danny Elfman soundtrack as well. It's iconic. In this film.
Yeah.
And Vincent Price is in it. Let's not forget Vincent Price. He's the inventor. He's the person. Price. He's Johnny Depp's dad.
Obviously, you got the villain in it, Jim, played by Anthony Michael Hall, and originally Crispin Glover auditioned to play him. That would have been a very different film as well, wouldn't it? Because Jim's quite the kind of, if I remember rightly, he's kind of the more sort of typical macho character. So having someone who's kind of physically similar in Crispin Glover, that would kind of be a weird... I don't know if that would quite have worked as well. I think Crispin Glover's got such a weird energy about him anyway, if you've read anything on him.
Edward Scissorhands is another film that doesn't necessarily have a feel-good ending.
It's kind of similar in a way to The Notebook, really. You got the old character at the end reminiscing about the times before. Because it's Kim telling her granddaughter the story.
But for Edward, it's not exactly a happy ending, is it? He sort of just has to go back to being a reclusive lifestyle, doesn't he, at the end?
Well, you don't know what happens. Remember, Kim convinces the neighbours when they all gather towards the end that Jim and Edward had killed each other.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't know what happens to him. So she believes he's still alive because it wouldn't be snowing without him.
The snow dance scene is wonderful.
Oh, it's beautiful, man.
Film for the snow dance. Anyway, let's go.
Just watch the film.
Yeah, just watch the film.
Now, David, if I said to you, your mother's a tracer,
I'd slap you.
Fair enough.
What's the context?
She isn't an artist in her own right because she is just tracing around lines that someone else has drawn in terms of a comic book.
Okay, then I'd be okay.
It's an insult. It is an insult. It's like, you're just a tracer. Your mother's a tracer. Anyway, my number 6 film, not perhaps the most well-known line from it, although if you're a fan of this film, you will know Your Mother's a Tracer. And after the relative straight-ahead comedy of Clerks and Mallrats, 1997's Chasing Amy was Kevin Smith's first film that dialed much more into the drama, and at the time was his biggest box office hit of his career at that point. It was made on a paltry budget of $250,000, and it made $12 million at the box office. David, do you know anything about Chasing Amy?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to spoil the film, but I don't think you would have watched it anyway, and perhaps by telling you the story of it, it might make you want to watch it. The film features Smith regulars Ben Affleck and Jason Lee as best friend and comic book writers Holden McNeil and Banky Edwards, and arguably this is both of their best performances to date in their careers at this point. Affleck's character Holden meets a girl at a comic book convention called Alyssa, who he immediately falls for until he discovers she's a lesbian. Unperturbed, he continues to pursue her and they become closer and closer until they do eventually sleep together. Of course, this makes his best friend Banky spectacularly jealous, and he was already kind of a spectacular arsehole beforehand. Banky finds out that years ago that she did actually have a threesome with 2 guys, immediately tells his best friend, who absolutely reacts in the wrong way about it, saying, and she's like, look, it was all in my past, I shouldn't have to apologise for my past, and on the verge of it all going spectacularly wrong, Holden realises that his best friend Banky is actually in love with him, and he proposes a threesome between the 3 of them, thinking it'll be a way of evening everything out and getting her past behind him. Banky seems interested, Alyssa does not, and she walks out. A year later, all three of them bump into each other again at a comic book convention, all now being single, or being separate from each other, but having successes of their own. And we see Holden's new comic is all about his relationship with Alyssa, which she gives her a copy titled Chasing Amy. They don't get back together, and she goes off happily with her new girlfriend, who asked her, "Who was that?" "Just some guy I knew." Now, right, that's kind of the plot of the film, but there were obvious issues looking back at it now with the trope of the straight man converting a lesbian, and Smith has never been subtle with his writing, but I think the earnestness of the Central Feast performance... Sorry, I forgot to mention that Alyssa was played by Joey Lauren Adams, who at the time of the film was dating Kevin Smith as well. I think if they're just, the performances are so raw and feel so real, the characters in the way they deal with it and the dialogue. I mean, as I said, in Smith's early films, the dialogue was so caustic and harsh that you don't expect it to come out of those characters you don't expect to hear that type of dialogue out of the characters' mouths. It's shocking at the time. Like I said, Clerks almost got an X certificate because of language when it first came out. And this film has been praised and criticised for its heterosexual conversion narrative, but I'd argue against that because although Alyssa is a lesbian and or clearly bi in this film, after her relationship with Holden ends, she goes back to her relationship with women again. And it's funny, I've kind of been reading online about how people have viewed this film now. And it does seem split quite down the middle on people saying it's bad because it's the male fantasy of, oh, you see a girl you fancy and she's a lesbian and you can convert her. But then proponents of the film have said, well, no, actually, how often had you seen a film where a woman's straight and then she becomes a lesbian in the film and then goes back to being straight again after a brief dalliance? This was the other way around. It was a female character having a dalliance with a man, but then going back to that again. And they said, actually, that's a more positive representation because the character, she is pretty much in control of everything the whole way through. She doesn't apologise for her past. She's got no hang-ups on who she is and how she is. And honestly, it was just, for me, this was Smith's best film for quite a while. I'm always kind of go between them, but it was his most grown-up and adult film he did at that point. Also, a special shout-out, David, to Dwight Yule as Hooper X, who is a militant black comic book maker who's also gay, but he's secretly closeted. But when he's in front of all the Comic-Con crowds, he's just pure Malcolm X in comic book film. He goes on an epic rant about racism in the Star Wars universe. And even if you don't watch the film, just look up Chasing Amy Star Wars scene. It's just great, man. It's really funny.
I'm amazed Kevin Smith managed to get Ben Affleck to do more than one film.
Well, they start. You can thank Ben Affleck's can thank a lot of his early career to Kevin Smith. He has a minor role in Mallrats, and then Chasing Amy was the first film Smith did after Mallrats.
Okay, I was thinking Dogma. Isn't Dogma?
No, Dogma was after Chasing Amy, and it was kind of around '97 time. I think that he, I forget exactly when Good Will Hunting was, but it was around that time that he started blowing up. But he'd always go back and help Smith out and do a Smith film. And like you say, Dogma and this, it's really worth watching, man, because Affleck is brilliant in this. He's really good. And like you say, you get this brilliant racist Star Wars rant in it. Go get back to the music. This film features a few songs and the actual main score of the film done by Soul Asylum's Dave Pirner. And Soul Asylum was the last gig I only went to a few months ago, and they were awesome. And the soundtrack as well also features Faithless's Insomnia. It's got 90s grunge band from the States, Sponge, on it. The Mighty Mighty Boss Tones impression that I get, that I think everyone knows because that was used in an episode of Friends. And yeah, David, your mother's a tracer.
Okay. I'll take it.
But I said it's said with love.
Okay, I understand now.
So, David, what is your number 5 film?
Number 5 is A Man That Just Wants His Jenny.
Oh, is it Colin Farrell in The Banshees of Inisherin?
No, it is not.
Oh.
Jenny. I love you, Jenny. Name the boat Jenny. You get it, yeah? You got it?
Oh, yeah, I know. Gump.
There you go. Banshees of Inisherin. Come on, man. It's Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump.
Jenny's a bitch, man. I'm sorry. Like, she is an awful person. And I will blame it out there now.
I wouldn't say she was an awful person. She was a woman that made mistakes and tried to reconcile with them at the end.
Yeah, when she knew she was dying.
Her story is different though, because her story is equally as heartbreaking because she was abused by her father at a young age. So you can't say that she was a bitch because she was dealing with emotional trauma that she was dealing with from a young age.
No, but in the context of the film, a lot of people don't like Jenny's character because it is that thing of how she seems to lead Forrest on the whole way through the film, then only gets back together with him at the end of the film
Yeah.
when she knows she's dying. It's just like,
I mean, it's not a great look because he's
No.
incredibly rich at the moment. She's
Yeah,
dying,
exactly.
but she has a son. She wants to make sure that the boy is Forrest's boy.
look, it's
is
a lovely film, but
cared and
I
looked
don't.
after.
I don't think this. Okay, I'm going to argue the point on this one because I don't think. I think Forrest could have quite happily gone on doing what he was doing without her coming back. So, is their sort of narrative of the two of them getting together really the film's central piece?
Yes,
No.
it's the constant. Jenny is the constant in his entire life. Every moment of his life, Jenny is a part of it in some way.
Yeah, I suppose because he's writing the letters when he's in Vietnam. He's always talking to her, isn't he? Even when she's not there.
Yeah, or just bumps into her, at the Martin Luther King speech with the Black Panthers. Bumps into her, sees her in college, all throughout his childhood. Names the boat after her, and then the whole film, he's waiting. He's telling the story of his life, waiting at the bus stop to see her.
I've just been reading where you've been eloquently putting it, that David, about the sequel Gump and Co. And I can definitely see why it's never been made into a sequel.
Okay, I never heard of this.
There's a book, and it is just dark. Imagine the road crossed with Forrest Gump, and that's what it sounds like. It's horrible. I'm just reading the synopsis, and yeah. So in comparison, Forrest Gump, lovely romantic, warm, feel-good film.
But it is just a good film. Even if you was to take the romantic element out of the film, it would still be a good film because it's the story of a man who basically just does as he's told, because he's not the most intelligent of gentlemen. He just does as he's told throughout his entire film, and he becomes very successful because of it. I think he has an IQ of 75, and he becomes very successful because of it.
Bubba Gump. I've
Ping
been to
pong
Bubba
champ.
Gump.
What are his successes? He becomes a ping pong champion. He invests in Apple.
War hero.
Incredibly early. He becomes a war hero.
Bubba Gump Shrimp Company.
He's probably like the biggest running person ever. Yep. Starts up Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. And
when I was in Hawaii, I actually went to the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company.
Like a restaurant?
Yeah, it's an actual restaurant in the States.
Yeah,
and they've got all Forrest Gump
they've
stuff
got
up.
them all over.
Is it? Oh.
I'm pretty sure there's some in London. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I might be lying there, but I'm
You
sure
could be.
there is.
Quick interruption, David, because we've just had another comment drop on our Twitter as we've been doing this with another one of our shout outs, and that's the guys over at Perpetual Cinema, and they said Sleepless in Seattle is a standard, definitely, and The Holiday makes you believe Jack Black can get Kate Winslet. Interesting.
I can see that.
That was prime Jack Black days there, though. That was prime Jack Black.
One of the main things that Forrest Gump also has going for it is that it was also directed by the same man that directed Back to the Future, who is very much influential on this podcast.
Mr. Zemeckis. Professor Zemeckis. No, Dr. Zemeckis. Well, David, we're down to my number 5. And that film is... I have a romantic film starring Kate Winslet, David.
It's The Reader, isn't it? We were saying this. You sold me this. And I was just like, is it Titanic?
I was
like, no, it's not Titanic. It's The Reader. It's The Reader. I bet you it's The Reader.
How much money do you want to bet me it's The Reader, bearing in mind you've got a wedding to pay for?
I don't want to bet you any money because I have a wedding to pay for.
Exactly.
I think... Is it The Reader?
It's not The Reader.
Oh, damn it. Okay. I was so sure it'd be The Reader.
This film also stars Mark Ruffalo, Elijah Wood, Kirsten Dunst, and it has a plot that is very similar to the central theme of Severance.
So the central theme of Severance, of like having your mind erased. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I've not seen this film. I know.
Do you know what?
It's one of those films that I've just missed. I never got around to seeing it.
Again, I watched the trailer for this, and it held up actually quite well. Right, it held up very well, bearing in mind when it came out. What year did it come out again? Because you're obviously Googling.
2004.
Obviously, if I told you Jim Carrey was in it, that probably would have tipped you off straight away.
Yes.
But yeah, upon revisiting this, I was shocked to find how similar the central idea of the film is to Severance. It's not exactly the same, but the basic plot is, for those of you who've forgotten, after an argument, Carrey's character Joel, he discovers that his girlfriend Clementine has had all her memories of him erased by a company called Lacuna. Not Lumin, Lacuna. Distraught, Joel decides to have the same procedure, and then the film is him kind of rushing through his memories of her as they're deleted one by one. And again, I'd forgotten a lot of this film when I was researching it for this pod, especially all the subplots involving Dunst, Ruffalo and Wood's characters. But This is also one of the few films where the trailer holds up really well. And once again, it uses the classic ELO song and one of my dad's favourites, Mr. Blue Sky. And yeah, man, please don't ruin it. Please don't ruin it, man.
I won't.
So yeah, this was kind of the start of Kerry doing slightly more dramatic roles, to be fair. He went on to do a brilliant... actually, that should have been on my list. The Majestic, the film he did with Frank Darabont. You ever seen that?
Seen it? Nah.
Oh, it's wonderful. That's the one where he plays a fading film star who drives off a bridge and loses his memory and gets taken in by the kind people in the small town. And then someone turns up who knows who he is. But he doesn't. And of course he falls in love with someone locally as well. But it was kind of like a modern It's a Wonderful Life kind of deal film. It was like really, really nice kind of romantic drama. There wasn't as much comedy in it.
Anyway, we're not talking about that movie.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. As I said, Carrie was doing his more dramatic roles. Winslet is always excellent and chameleonic in whatever her role is. And I love the message of the film, which is, as painful as our memories can seem, they are what make us who we are, and you can't lose your memories without losing a part of yourself. Also, this was a smash hit. Its budget was only 20 million, and it made 74 million.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of goddamn money there. It's not quite 2.8 billion.
No, but what is?
Avatar.
Yeah, well, I've got an issue with James Cameron that I'm going to get onto maybe later.
Okay, well, my number 4, I think, is where we're at. Also star Kate Winslet, and it's much more typical on everybody's
obvious
list than... Actually, no, I suppose, no, to be fair, your film's quite obvious as well. I reckon Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind will be on a lot of people's lists.
Yeah,
I've just not seen it.
So you've picked the film with Kate Winslet on a big boat and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, and the boat goes splash.
And the Irish guys in the basement keep playing.
Jack, I'm flying. That's the one. But the scene I really want to talk about and I really want to analyse is that spit scene. Where they're hooking it in. And she gets a really good purchase on there. Of course, I think everybody's seen Titanic, right? It's like literally, who hasn't seen it? Was James Cameron's biggest movie. It was the most highest grossing film of all time until Avatar.
This ties in perfectly with what my rant I was just about to say about Cameron, actually. But you having Titanic here. So this weekend, I was going to go and see Women Talking, which is the new Claire Foy, Frances McDormand, Jessie Buckley film, nominated for quite a few Oscars. It is on next to nowhere, but what you can go and see in the cinema this weekend is the re-release of Titanic in 3D. Yay!
Was it in 3D?
The new one is.
Oh, okay, I thought it was just it's 25-year anniversary, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's in 3D. So you can watch it, you can have the ship go through your skull as you watch it. So Cameron, come on Jim, you've got enough money. You're literally just fighting against yourself now. So you've re-released Titanic to make more money on the box office, to like even out against Avatar 2, which is like coming for it.
Okay. Well, anyway, I have some...
Anyway, back to Titanic.
I have some interesting things. So, because everybody's talking about Titanic on the positive thing, it's a beautiful story, heart-wrenching. Again, it's a tearjerker.
Old lady at the end recounting stuff.
That old lady at the end...
It's been 84 years.
I realise, she's old Rose, I get it. And it's a really poetic ending when she throws the heart of the ocean back into the ocean. She's like throwing herself back to Jack. She's it's basically saying that she's going to die and that she wants to be with Jack in the ocean. Blah, 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 blah. Lovely, poetic moment. How fucking selfish. God damn it, woman. You had no life left. Your family was poor by the looks of the pottery that they were doing. And you could have just kept that. It could have been a massive heirloom. They could have made millions off that sapphire. And you threw it in the ocean. You threw it to the bottom of the ocean to be with the Titanic instead of just keeping it and letting your family live off the money that it would have got. Huh? What's that all about? The Dawson family, the Dawson line would have been well off for life.
Instead, they had to move to a creek in Cape Side and start all again.
DiCaprio in this film, Neil, was 21 years old when he filmed this film, which is 2 years older than his current girlfriend. I was about to say, so how old was his girlfriend when he made this film? And then I was thinking, no, that's going to get us into a dodgy area. Which, if you think about it, is bonkers. how old this film is.
He is just turning into Jack Nicholson, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but his current girlfriend would not be born for another, 5 years?
Leonardo DiCaprio is literally, at the minute, Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused.
It's not my favourite James Cameron film, actually. That was going to be a lie. But it is in my top 5, my number 4 most romantic movie of all time.
Well, David, my number 4 was your number 10, I think. I've lost track. What was your number 10?
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day, yeah. And yeah, I said of all the films I've picked so far, I'd argue this is the least deserving on the list to be on the romantic kind of.
No, I think again, it is a constant theme throughout the film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's more about Murray's journey of self-realization from being a prick to being a good person, which is the ultimate journey of the movie. And it's only when he starts becoming a good person that Rita finally sees him in a new light. And that is kind of his main object of the film, is to get together with Rita. And you got the repeated scenes of him trying every available tactic.
I think you're safe with this one. I think this one.
I just think it's the least. I just feel movie. Well, it is a romantic movie, but I've got issues.
Although on IMDb, romantic is, or whatever the word, romance isn't one of the genres.
Okay, but
it's associated with comedy, drama, and fantasy.
Because it's got the whole time loop thing, which hadn't been done before in a film as successful. You've got the repeated scenes of him trying every available tactic to impress her and ask her out again and again, and then only for sometimes, because he starts getting better at it and it starts working, but then she forgets about him every day, and that is a trope that has been done many times since 50 First Dates.
That's quite a nice film as well. That's a nice Adam Sandler film.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of good Adam Sandler romance.
Wedding Singer. Wedding Singer could be on a few people's lists as well.
Yeah, the weddings. Yeah, I mean,
although there's not many romances where someone's yelling at the start, "Somebody kill me!" But also, you've got Andy Samberg's and Christian Mjolnir's excellent Palm Springs, which is kind of the same thing, except you've got two people who keep going back and having to remind everyone every day. But this is Bill Murray at his pure dickish best for most of the film. Although, if you overanalyze the end of the film, I still think it's a bit much that you can ask that the film asks Rita can change her mind about Phil that much in one day, because it's only once he stops pursuing her and other women. What about Nancy? Justice for Nancy. That after going to a very dark place where he tries to repeatedly kill himself, that he then hits rock bottom and starts improving himself and helping other people out. And it's finally this that makes Rita fall for him. But I don't know how many years they've worked together. I'm assuming it's a year or so, at least, minimum. How can it be that after a year of him being a dick and working together, I'm not sure I buy her change to getting together with him in one day? And also, isn't it a little creepy that
you do kind of forget that her perspective, you don't see it because you don't see it from her perspective, do you?
And it's a little creepy that he literally knows everything he can about her to manipulate her to get to this point. Still, modern day issues aside, it is a classic. And it was made on a disputed budget of between 15 to 30 million and had a massive box office of 105 million. Modern classic. I just need to get the 4K of it now. So, David, what is your number 3? We're up to the 3s.
Oh, top 3. Blimey. Wow. Who'd have thought we'd get here only 2 hours later.
We're an hour and 20 in without mistakes. We're going to do this.
Number 3 is a film.
Is it really?
Probably, it is a film, yeah, believe it or not. It is probably the most famous love story ever told. I'd say. And it stars a certain Leonardo DiCaprio as Romeo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I was going to say that.
And a certain Claire Danes as Juliet. Romeo plus Juliet. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet.
You got there in the end.
It is, yeah, there we go. So, it's a modern day telling of Shakespeare's famous play.
Romeo and Juliet.
But it's not really a modern day telling. It was at the time, but it's now a 90s telling of. It's a very much a 90s telling of Romeo and Juliet's of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And if you were to tell me this film like I'm about to tell it to you, I wouldn't want to go and fucking watch it. I wouldn't want to watch a film where the dialogue
thou art
is all Shakespearean. but it's set in modern 90s America. That would properly throw me off. I wouldn't want to watch that. I wouldn't want to watch a film where I know that there's Shakespearean dialogue in it to the extent that this is. But this is such a good fucking film. It's one of those... The moment where Romeo meets Juliet and Desiree is playing in the background, it's one of those moments that just gives you goosebumps, where he sees her through the fish tank and Kissing You is playing in the background.
Yeah, I've seen it once, and I was
it's
like,
goosebumps. It gives me goosebumps. I genuinely love this movie. It's one of those movies that I can throw on and watch it, enjoy it at any moment, any time of the day, any mood that I'm in.
Well, I've got a few facts for you, David, that maybe you knew or maybe you didn't know about this film. Did you know Natalie Portman was originally cast for the film?
I did not.
For Claire Danes' role.
I did not.
But she was only 14
Natalie
at
Portman
the time.
Was meant to be Juliet, wasn't
she was cast, but during rehearsals, it was thought she looked too young for the part, and the footage looked like DiCaprio was molesting her. Okay. Lerman changed his mind and stated that Portman was too young at the time and made DiCaprio look older than intended, even though he was 21 at the time of filming. So, Buffy herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar,
older
also
than his
turned
current
down
girlfriend.
The role. Yeah. I mean, good God.
How old are Romeo and Juliet actually meant to have been? They were meant to have been 13, weren't they?
Yeah, well, it was all dodgy back then.
Something like that, 13, yeah. Again, the theme of this film is forbidden love. I am a real sucker for that forbidden love story.
A lot of films where everyone dies at the end.
It's my favourite love tale. That forbidden, the tale of two people that are told that they can't be together, but throughout all odds, they find a way.
Life finds a way.
Or
David.
in this case, shoot each other.
Yeah. You have picked a lot of films.
Shoot each other to be with each other.
You are picking a lot of films where one of the two central people die at the end. They all die, or someone just sadly remembers being really old and looking back on it.
Do you remember Paul Rudd being in this film?
I do not. Was he?
Yeah, Paul Rudd was in Romeo.
As Dave Paris, the well-known Dave Paris.
There you go. Yeah.
What I am going to talk about, though, David, is the soundtrack to this film. Because I actually had the soundtrack to this, despite having not seen the film at the time, because it had some great music on it. It had Garbage, who were massive at the time, with their song Number One Crush. Everclear, one of my favourite bands, had a song that wasn't on any of their albums, and it was only on here called Local God, that they played when I saw them at the Same Eager Soul Asylum a little while ago. You had the Butthole Service, One Inch Punched, the Cardigans' Loveful, which obviously was the big song from the film, and you also had Radiohead on there. And of course, a song I think was massive at the time when I remember in all the indie clubs, when I was going to indie clubs around this time, You and Me song by the Wannadies. Do you remember that song?
I probably would if you played
You
it.
and me. Dun, dun, dun,
I think this is the first time you've ever sang on the podcast.
No, there was Cocaine Bear.
Oh, that
A little while ago.
Count.
Hey, it'll count when Cocaine Bear retweets it. That's my mission
Well,
for
anyway,
the month.
like I mentioned, the "I'm Kissing You" song, that was my favourite moment. That's my favourite. Goosebumps, and that and the music really amplifies it. You know,
I think this was Lerman at his best. Like, he used modern music, modern settings, and it's just, I think it was a perfect amalgamation of his style at the time and what he was trying to do.
100%. It's his best film.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't argue with you there. I will add one last thing, is that it cost $14.5 million.
You're well on your budgeting stuff today.
I know. Yeah. That was my nickname in one of my contracts. I was Budget Man, because I keep telling people how much money they needed to make. In a nice, friendly way. At least I think that's what I did the video of, everyone pretending to be me asking how much money they make. So, David, my number 3 film is the oldest film on my list, and it's from 1989, and it is probably the most iconic film on my list that is well known, that made an absolute ton of money. Its budget was $16 million, and it made $92 million at the box office that year.
1989.
It's in last year, the film was preserved in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, and in this case, aesthetically significant.
When Harry Met Sally?
Of course, it's When Harry Met Sally. Directed by Rob Reiner and written by Nora Ephron, it is a classic starring everyone's favourite 80s and 90s rom-com queen, Meg Ryan, alongside one of the comedians of the decade in Billy Crystal, who I still love in City Slickers 1 and 2. Have you seen City Slickers, David?
No.
Have you seen When Harry Met Sally?
I have seen When Harry Met Sally. Yeah, I didn't like it as much. It wasn't. I don't know whether it was a slightly because I think maybe because I've been watching more of the the Richard Curtis.
Oh yeah, well it's not the same.
It's different. Anyway, that's probably why.
This film poses the age-old question: can a man and woman really just be friends? And from their first meeting, we keep checking in with Harry and Sally over a 12-year period as they keep growing closer before life gets in the way to separate them again and again. And again, thinking back on this film, how many films have we seen do this trait where the couple are going to get together, but then when it's not the right time because one of them's with someone else, and then we catch up later this year, and then the other person's with someone else, and then there's a misunderstanding. This is one of the films that first did this that well. This should be on everyone's list because the film... I mean, the question the film asks is still asked today, every day. And from Wikipedia, apparently Billy Crystal was fifth choice to play Harry in it. Originally, they wanted Tom Hanks, and that would have made it 3 rom-coms in a row with Meg Ryan after Joe vs. Volcano, Sleepless in Seattle, and the book one that I've forgotten. What's the book one? You Got Mail. Yeah, You Got Mail. Remember my hat trick. It's funny because no one ever mentions Joe versus Volcano because it's such a weird and dark film. But I really want to go back and watch it again sometime. Richard Dreyfuss was up for the running. Michael Keaton could have been him, and Albert Brooks, and they all turned it down. So fifth choice, and it ends up being like one of the films of the year. We have to talk the famous fake orgasm scene in the diner. And did you know who the old lady was who says, "I'll have what she's having," David? This is a famous bit of trivia.
I can't remember. I don't know.
It's the director's mother, Estelle.
I can't even remember the scene.
There's a bit where they're talking about fake orgasms, and she does one in a restaurant.
I know the fake orgasm scene. It's been a while since I've watched
that's the scene. And then...
Oh, no, I know. Yeah. Okay, I got it. I'm with you.
Yeah, and then the old lady goes, "I'll have what she's having."
Because she's just like,
that's literally the most famous line from the film. And it's the director's mum, Estelle Reiner, stealing the film there with a great line.
Of course I wouldn't have known that.
I know.
Why ask?
Also, you cannot forget their 2 respective best friends, Marie and Jess. And guess who plays Marie in it, David?
It's Carrie Fisher. I know
that. Is that because you're looking at the page?
No.
I'd forgotten they were in this, to be fair. And of course, I forgot that they end up as a couple themselves.
I don't know who plays the other friend.
Bruno Kirby. But they end up as a couple themselves when originally they were there because they're the best friends of Harry and Sally throughout the film, and they try and set them up with each other, and it backfires because they hate their date and they end up getting together themselves. Also, on the technical side, cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld went on to work with the Coen brothers and then became a director in his own right, directing all the 90s Addams Family films and the Men in Black trilogy, and even Wicca 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 Wild Wild West. As I mentioned earlier, this had a budget of 16 million and it made 92 million, and it is the oldest film on my list. But it's one of the best. David, what do you have at number 2?
Number 2, my man, you know what, I've actually forgotten. No, it's my one and only Richard Curtis movie. Let's make the list. No.
Notting Hill.
Notting Hill. Yes, Notting Hill. This film I grew up with being constant, well, I would say constantly on the telly. My dad loves this movie. So when I was living at home, it would be on like every other month. You know, this and Hunt for Red October. My dad's not a big cinema person.
They are not 2 films I would expect to see in a double bill anywhere.
Yeah, so Notting Hill and Hunt for Red October were just the go-tos for my old man. And this, for me, is Richard Curtis's best film. Better than Four Weddings and a Funeral. It is floppy Hugh Grant. Floppiest.
Julia Roberts
is Julia Roberts looking absolutely radiant as Anna Scott. And it's the story of a regular London bloke owns a bookshop, not very fucking good bookshop. It's a travel bookshop. No one's going to want to go in that bookshop. You know, that's the most boring bookshop you can imagine. And just happens through a chance encounter, superstar, who would be the equivalent
today
of Anna Scott in today's cinema?
I suppose it'd be someone like
it's because she's young as well. So she's not. It's not like you can't say it's
Zendaya.
Yeah. Let's go Zendaya. Yeah, the equivalent of Zendaya walking into your store and you starting a romantic relationship.
I mean, it'd be weird because I'm much older than her. I'm not Leo DiCaprio. I'm just saying.
And then the moments that happen because she's obviously who she is, and everybody else in his life is just normal
Yeah.
people. It's pure comedy gold. Richard, you know what? Is this the only comedy that I have?
Well,
in my
it's a
list as
romantic
well?
comedy.
The only actual rom-com.
Yeah, a lot of your films have
Yeah.
people dying at the end, being really sad and remembering.
This is by far my favorite. It's got Rhys Ifans in it as his loser
Roommate, I remember that.
roommate.
Yeah, because
Spike.
this is the film that made him famous, isn't it? Because it's in the trailer where he's in the bath. He walks in. Is she in the bath or is he in the bath?
She's in the bath, and he goes in for a poop. And then he sees her, and he just goes in again just to have. And he's got so many good moments in it. He's got the t-shirt moment where he's like, "I want a date tonight. Does this look good?" And it's like, and the t-shirt he goes with has fancy a fuck on the back.
There's quite a few other little casting notes on this. That Misha Barton from the OC, who after the OC pretty much did nothing, she appears in this as the 12-year-old actress in the film within the film, Helix. Also, Emily Mortimer was in it, playing, I don't even remember her in it, but she's credited as Perfect Girl. According to casting notes on Wikipedia, Sanjeev Bhaskar has a cameo role as a loud and offensive restaurant patron who refers to Meg Ryan, the actress who has an orgasm every time she's taken out for a cup of coffee scene in the restaurant and on Real Visit. So there's our link from my 3 to your number 2. Yay! Nice.
Notting Hill is genuinely, I think, the best
out of all the
rom-com
ones of his you could have mentioned,
made.
This is the one I have the least problem with. So yeah, well done. Nice choice. Now, however, saying that, David, my number 2, I think you might have a problem with, because what is more romantic than having to fight your prospective girlfriend's 7 evil exes? Yes, David.
Oh, fucking son of a bitch.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
It's not
Yes,
Scott Pilgrim.
because once again, it's a Michael Cera film where he's a geeky guy in a band who pines after a massively cool dream girl, where in this film it's...
I'll allow it as a romance movie. I'll give you that. Because it is the crux of the film throughout.
Exactly.
But there's something about this film that I really just don't like.
I know, you've mentioned before. But anyway, I was talking about the stunning Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who should be put in all the films, David. All of them. And yes, I did briefly toy with Shaun of the Dead instead, which is a definitive rom-com. But you know what? Scott Pilgrim is just the very definition of romance. Unless your name's Knives Chow in the film. But hey, she ends up with the guy called Neil in it. So there you go. Everyone gets a happy ending. Sadly, it was a bomb, because it cost 60 to 85 million to make, and it only made 50 million back. But in the years since, it has become a cult classic and a favourite in the 13 years since its release back in 2010. And just look at the cast this film has had. Bar the main leads in Cera and Winstead, obviously, you had pre-Succession Kieran Culkin, Captain America himself, Chris Evans, in his first kind of really douchebaggy role, Anna Kendrick and Alison Pill, as well as Brandon Routh, Stop Vegan Police, as like the vegan bass player from The Clash at Demon Head, and you have an early show-stopping performance from Brie Larson, who was only 18 at the time when she did this, as Scott's evil ex, Envy Adams. And as usual, man, I'm a sucker for a good soundtrack, and in a film like this, Beck is actually behind most of the songs that Scott's band Sex Bomb On play in the film, and they got so many good songs like Garbage Man, and my personal favourite after the fucking day I've had today, the song is called We Hate You, Please Die.
Who are you talking about there, Neil?
What a soundtrack. I could not possibly say, David. But what a soundtrack curates, because not as well as the Beck songs on this that he's written, you've got Metric, you've got the Rolling Stones, the Black Lips, T-Rex, Blue Tones, Broken Social Scene, and even Frank Black from the Pixies as well. It's one of those ones where the message is learning to be yourself, power up. And who would have thought I would have Michael Cera in 2 of my top 10 romantic movies of all time,
I think that's the
David?
biggest shock here.
That is definitely a big shock. So, David, what is your number 1 most romantic film of all time? What is a film when you want to snuggle down on a couch and watch?
I think this isn't going to shock anybody or surprise anybody.
I can't guess, actually, because you've gone through most of the ones I thought.
It's a tale as old as time, Neil.
Is it a Bible?
It's an old tale. But no, it's not the Bible. It is Beauty and the Beast. Disney's animated Beauty and the Beast, 1991. I mean, yeah, who hasn't seen Beauty and the Beast? So this film is number 1 for multiple reasons. It's a film Disney, for both me and Natasha, is going to feature heavily at our wedding.
Okay.
In some aspect or another. We're going to Disney World in Florida for our honeymoon.
Nice.
So Disney's pretty big for us. And this song, Tale as Old as Time, in a piano version, orchestrate, but I don't know, I think it's a piano. It's going to feature during the wedding at some point. So it's got a lot of personal value to this film, as well as just it being a another forbidden love story in ways.
Hmm. The reason this is your number one, David, like you've just told everyone there, it's the film that has inflected your life so much. You know, it's Disney is something I guess you both watch together quite a lot, right?
Yes, yeah, it is, yeah.
Exactly, and going to Disneyland, so you've got that personal connection to the story.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Disney probably would have featured more heavily on this list. Like, for instance, you could have had The Lion King in there, but then again, is The Lion King really... Romance isn't really the crux of the
Definitely
film.
not.
But it does have a very good song in it. Beauty and the Beast is my number one.
Well, David, my number one, as you correctly predicted, when we even had the idea to do this episode of the pod, he was like, "This is going to be your number one, isn't it?" And yes, it is, David. My favourite romantic film of all time, as you guessed, months ago, from just a suggestion of the idea, is indeed Richard Linklater's 1995 Before Sunrise, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, which cost $2.5 million to make and made $22 million, and also spawned two sequels, Before Sunset and Before Midnight, which catches up with the characters 10 years on and another 10 years on, therefore making it one of the greatest trilogies of all time. Rather than talk more specific, the film's so simple. It's boy meets girl on a train, they start chatting, and then he's like, "Look, I've got a day and night to kill in Vienna before my next train. We seem to be like vibing quite well. We seem to be chatting, hitting it off. Do you want to get off the train and just hang out with me for the day so I'm not stuck by myself?" And she, he's the typical brash American. She's the classic exotic French girl, and it's just them hanging out, talking about their lives, and flirting and realizing, we really do kind of like each other. And then as day gives way to night, they're just wandering the city. They get their picture drawn by a street painter. They go to these little cafes. They go to record shops. And it's just a lovely film, man. It's just,
I really do need to see it because,
yeah.
it is your number one film. And to be fair, your list, we haven't been crazily different on our two lists.
No.
We've been quite, whilst we haven't had, we had the same film once. Aside from that, every single one of your films, aside from the ones I haven't seen, would probably make my list another day or my long list in some way. Some of them did. This will have to be a good film.
A lot of people, it's funny, you tend to get people who have two different thoughts on romantic films. You have a lot of lists you see have the standard Richard Curtis, The Notebook. I'm surprised you didn't mention Dirty Dancing or Grease or that kind of stuff. But I'm
not a big fan of Dirty Dancing, and Grease is my mum's favourite film. So that was like the on all the time from my mum's perspective when I was there, yeah.
But what you get with that is, I think then you kind of have the more, and I don't want to say sort of indie alternative, but I guess I'm going to, the more kind of India, less well-known lists, and Before Sunrise is usually number one on lots of them. And I'm not just saying that for like street cred. I literally, as I've mentioned on the pod before, Richard Linklater was one, and Kevin Smith were two reasons why I got into film and went to college to do film, and now kind of work in the industry, as it were. Not the film industry, but I make stuff, I edit stuff, and I get paid to do it, which is kind of cool. But I wanted to do this, man. I love the idea of just traveling through Europe on a train, just meeting people, having a chat, seeing all these amazing vacations and just places. And I really wanted to do that when I was younger. I still want to do that now, because although I think, do you know what, this film could have subconsciously made me take the job working on cruise ships for 7 years. I got to travel the world and do that. And again, when I look back on my life, you have those nights where you meet someone for the first time and you just start chatting away. You find you've got stuff in common. And before you know it, you realise, we've literally been talking for about the whole evening. Obviously, as you get older, that becomes less and less a thing. But when you're younger, you meet someone at a party and you talk till daylight and then,
Yeah, I mean,
and this film just reminds me of that,
really has anything to do with it. I feel like it depends on if you...
It's just that you find that instant bond with someone.
As you're older, you start to not put yourself into certain situations like that. Yeah. I think less and less is, but it's still out there.
But again, I like where you have that personal link to your number one film, Beauty and the Beast. I have that personal link to this film because I'm still planning it, man. I'm still planning. Obviously, the last couple of years put plans to but I'm going to plan to do a rail trip through Europe in the next year or two. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, get one of the train tickets, and just go through a bunch of countries on the train.
Nice.
I'm almost tempted to do Vienna just so I can literally do
it.
The Before Sunrise one.
Do it.
And literally go to the
and
places.
Vlog the entire time you're doing it. or just enjoy yourself and don't bother vlogging.
Just enjoy myself. Yeah, I'm not young enough to do vlogging everywhere. I might
Take a photo
do a few,
of every now and then.
I'll do a few Twitter posts. What I love about the film, and this is I forget who wrote this, but someone wrote it in a review somewhere, and it was a really good point that summed it up for me, is that at the end of the film, they're at the train station and they're trying to decide should we meet up again, and they agree, okay, we'll meet back here in 10 years if our lives are still in a place where we want to do this. And then the film ends and you're like, are they going to meet up again? We don't know. Of course we do know because they made a sequel 10 years later. But it's clever because it's not exactly what you think, which is good. And again, with the sequel 10 years after that. What just works so well at the film is after you see the train leave, the camera then cuts to all the locations they've walked through and where all the big sequences of the film has been. And this is what the review said, or the person wrote it. They said, and those places feel diminished without their presence there. It doesn't feel as alive as when those characters were just there. And I thought that's just such a beautiful way to sum up the film.
Mm.
And I think that's a beautiful way to sum up the end of the podcast. Yeah, this has been our top 10 most romantic movies of all time. And I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. And of course, we'll be doing our heads-to-head, David. I'll be posting these as we go once the pod's out in the world. And anything else you want to add?
Romance is nice. This is a nice one.
This was a nice one. There was very little arguing or name calling.
Yes. Are we having a blossoming romance?
I mean, it's been 2 years, David. I think that's longer than some marriages. Okay, that's all the time we got for today. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
We needed roads.